fresh economic fallout from Britain's decision to leave the European Union. The British pound tumbled today to a new 31-year low against the dollar, while business confidence dropped sharply, and major real estate funds moved to stop a run on their assets. The Bank of England reacted with moves to help banks free up more money for lending. On Wall Street, stocks fell as concerns about Britain's economy grew and oil prices slumped. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 108 points to close at 17,840. The Nasdaq fell 39 and the S&P 500 slipped 14.
Welcome to hell!
Rio's police are marching straight to the international terminal to give not an Olympic welcome, but a warning. We won't be able to protect you. Violence is on the rise here, and officers say they haven't been paid in months. The government says the claims are legitimate and is working towards normalizing the situation. But to the officers, it's hardly reassuring. These two men, Paulo and Joao, not their real names, operate under a different set of orders.
If I talk, I can be punished or even arrested for this.
They are with the military police, fighting what they call Rio's hidden civil war.
We are numbers, nothing more.
You encounter a drug trafficker armed with lots of ammunition, and you only have 20 bullets. It's absurd.
They risk talking to us because they say they've watched their fellow officers die to preserve Rio's image, not to protect its people.
We have a very common saying here in Brazil, for the English to see. I believe that the politicians here are doing everything for the English to see.
For the English to see, meaning put on a show for public consumption. They say the city's scant resources are used to patrol tourist hotspots like Copacabana instead of favelas like Maré, where the criminal gangs run the streets.
Even at an event like this that is meant to be raising awareness about police brutality, we're constantly being stopped from filming, which is just an indication of just how tense the things are. Right now, there's a lot of concerns about inadvertently filming armed men.
The government's own statistics show the number of people killed by police, including civilians caught in the crossfire, has nearly doubled in the last year. Human rights groups say the police are not just poorly trained, but trigger-happy.
They don't care if there is a child in the middle. They shoot their target.
State security officials tell CNN that they have taken measures over the years to expel officers for inappropriate behavior and say they have decreased the use of heavy weapons. But in Maré, residents say the raids are increasing and indiscriminate.
It seems like there is an order to put fear in the people so they stay calm, so they don't cause trouble in the city because the foreigners can't see that the city is chaotic.
And they probably won't. Over the next month, the federal government plans to flood Rio's tourist zones and Olympic venues with troops. But for Rio's residents living in the shadow of the games, it's security they will never see.
It's the middle of the week, and this school would normally be filled with hundreds of children. But today, this one and thousands of others across the United Kingdom are closed. And that's because teachers from across the country are on strike. The National Union of Teachers, or the NUT, overwhelmingly voted in favour of action. They want to take the government to task over pay and budget cuts.
This government has progressively undermined education. They're starting the process of privatising the education service. They're undermining teachers' pay and conditions.
The fact that the government's looking like it's going to take more money out of schools that are already struggling to get by will have a massively damaging effect on education.
We're having to pay the government back more money than we actually get back in, and things like the arts and some of the other sort of seen as less academic subjects are now also starting to have a cut made to them as well.
The Education Secretary Nicky Morgan said the walkout was unnecessary and harmful. She argued that it's putting children's education at risk.
Despite criticism from the government, the teachers have still come out in their numbers they feel they've been put in a position where they have no choice but to take such drastic action.
In France, the government invoked special constitutional powers to push a labor reform bill closer to enactment. The measure would make it easier to hire and fire workers, and it has angered labor unions. Thousands of union members marched through Paris in protest today, and opposition lawmakers walked out as the Prime Minister defended the bill in the National Assembly.
I decided after much deliberation to commit the responsibility of the government to the vote in its new reading. The government is proudly transparent and proudly courageous because we are acting in the interests of the French people.
For us, it's kind of a complete denial of democracy because it is a way for Manuel Valls to enforce its law. This is a profoundly anti-workers bill which cannot be supported by a party which is supposedly socialist.
News to tell you about. An El Al flight from New York has landed safely in Tel Aviv after a bomb scare. The Associated Press reporting that the flight had to be escorted by Swiss Air Force jets in Europe after the pilots received a bomb threat.
Yeah, the Boeing 747 took off from Kennedy Airport. It was headed to Israel. Reports say that the nature of the anonymous threat not yet clear, obviously. As we get more information on this one, we'll continue to bring it to you.
We didn't know anything until we landed. When we came out of the plane, there was somebody from the news who asked us if we know anything. And I said we didn't feel anything, we didn't know anything. And then he said he thought there was a bomb on the plane. So I was very nervous.
A series of large-scale joint anti-terror exercises kicked off on Sunday in Moscow with the participation of the Chinese People's Armed Police Force and Russia's newly formed National Guard. The special drills are held from July the 3rd to the 14th in Russia's Moscow and Smolensk regions. China's Snow Leopard and Falcon Commando units, as well as the Russian National Guard's Vityaz unit, are participating in the exercises. It's the third time for the two countries' interior forces to hold such exercises, which center on tactical skills in combating terrorism to boost practical cooperation between the forces of both sides.
Severe weather washed out several 4th of July celebrations in the East. Kentucky, one of the hardest hit areas. More than a third of the state was under a severe thunderstorm warning for most of the day. The National Weather Service will likely inspect destruction by this funnel cloud in eastern Kentucky to determine if it was a tornado.
Here in Lexington, people will be spending the next few days clearing toppled trees and cleaning up damaged homes. The powerful storm has left its mark all across the state of Kentucky. This storm, spotted in Louisa, Kentucky, near the border of West Virginia, was part of a weather system that ripped through the state. A possible twister tore through the local Walmart. Parts of the roof were sheared off, and the damage inside was widespread.
There's merchandise just strewn out throughout the entire store.
Outside, the storm's violent winds flipped a truck. Trees and light poles snapped at their base. This fireworks stand in the parking lot didn't stand a chance.
Literally looked like a funnel in the sky there. It was coming over that mountain. It was filled.
About 100 miles to the west in Lexington, high winds brought down trees and damaged homes.
I thought it was coming through the house. It sounded like it was coming through the house.
The local 4th of July celebration in Lexington started out fine, but was interrupted by heavy rains and powerful winds by early afternoon.
It flattened the tents, it blew all the gear down, everything sopping wet. People were running for their lives, it looked like.
About 50 miles south in Rockcastle County, Steve Lunsford watched from the window of his home as the storm threw his car around like a toy.
It just picked it straight up and set her down over here.
For many in the region, the 4th of July did not end with a blast. A number of cities and towns in central Kentucky canceled their fireworks shows because of the weather.
Korea's southeastern coast was shaken by the 5th most powerful earthquake to ever hit the Korean peninsula last night. Experts are handing out divided opinions on whether the 5.0 magnitude quake could be a prelude to something bigger.
The quake detection frequency in Korea has been increasing ever since the Great East Japan earthquake in 2011. In February of 2012, a series of 4 earthquakes struck off the coast of Ulsan, the same area where Tuesday's earthquake hit. Some experts say the quake can be traced to the Tsushima Goto Fault that sits below the East Sea.
It's a fault highly active with big and small tremors, so it wouldn't be unusual to see a bigger earthquake take place.
The marvelous city, stunning views and golden beaches, but you might think twice before you splash in. Lurking under Rio's waters, raw sewage, and now what scientists describe as super bacteria. Researchers at the Rio Federal University tested the city's beaches for a year and discovered high levels of the dreaded superbug, drug-resistant bacteria that have been turning up in hospitals.
We believe that through hospital sewage, it goes to the municipal sewage and it gets to the Guanabara Bay or through other rivers, and it finally gets to the beach.
The highest levels of superbacteria found on the shores of Guanabara Bay, site of the Olympic sailing event a month from now.
The online dating site Christian Mingle is now welcoming gay and lesbian users. The Wall Street Journal reports they'll be able to search for same-sex matches under a settlement approved by a judge over claims of discrimination. 2 gay men filed class action claims against Christian Mingle's parent company, Spark Network, for not giving them the option to seek a same-sex relationship. Spark Network also said they will change the options within the next 2 years for gay couples on the site. The network also agreed to pay the men $9,000 apiece and $450,000 in legal fees.
Chris Severe says if same-sex couples can legally marry, he should be able to legally marry an inanimate object. Chris Severe wants to marry his computer.
This is not a game, okay? This is not some kind of funny scenario.
He made his intentions known and went to Utah County Clerk Brian Thompson to ask for a marriage license.
In this day and age, nothing surprises me anymore. I've been in this office long enough. I've seen lots of different things, but I just said no. I legally cannot do that.
So Severe is suing. He says since it's legal for same-sex couples to marry, all other forms of marriage should be legal too. Severe says legalizing gay marriage is like turning religious beliefs into law because he says there's no scientific proof that homosexuality is a genetic trait.
There's no real proof that there's a gay gene. There's no real proof that people were born gay.
I asked Severe if he's truly sexually attracted to his computer.
Whatever a person has sex with, they can bond with. So, I mean, this is getting into, like, nasty fact stuff. And, I mean, the truth is that's, like, engaging in private intimacy kind of matters. And that's completely irrelevant for the purposes of federal court. It's also completely irrelevant for the legal matters at hand.
But he did say if the Supreme Court nullifies their ruling and redefines marriage as a union between a man and a woman, he would no longer want to marry his computer.
I stipulate that there is no marriage like man-woman marriage.
Severe filed this case in district court last week and will continue to follow it and update you on the judge's ruling.
A Christian group has won a court battle over Noah's Ark tourism attraction in Kentucky. The group applied for a tax break worth $18 million for an exhibit featuring a life-size replica of Noah's Ark. Kentucky's Governor Steve Beshear had rejected the application, saying it was a form of religious indoctrination. But the Christian group beat Kentucky in federal court, winning the tax break and attorney fees.
People are going to come from all over the world.
I believe this is going to be one of the greatest Christian outreaches of this era of history. It's going to forever change Williamstown, and we're going to see 2 million people, I believe, close to 2 million in the first year, maybe more.
It is awesome, absolutely. Just the magnitude, the scope, the size of it, it is incredible.
I think it's pretty fascinating, and to think that this kind of thing could happen that many years ago without the technologies that we have today, it's an incredible thing to see.